Some sounds echo in your soul forever. For Thomas, it was the crack of the Colt 45 that shattered his childhood and his sight. Now, 20 years later, sitting at his piano bench, he heard that same deadly whisper again. The killer thought he was safe. He was wrong, but Thomas didn't know yet that the familiar sound he would hear tonight would change not only his past, but his future forever. Thomas McKinnon's fingers danced masterfully across the piano keys. 40 years old, slender build, this man who always wore sunglasses was the soul of Silver Moon Saloon. Every evening from 6 o'clock until midnight, he played classical pieces, folk songs, sometimes melancholic tunes requested by customers. He had lost his sight 20 years ago, but since then, his ears had become a perfect weapon. He could recognize every footstep, categorize every sound in his memory. From the heel sound of cowboy boots, he could tell a person's age from their walking style, their mood. "Tom, you're wonderful tonight too," said Mary, the saloon owner, 45 years old, a gentlewoman who treated Thomas like both a boss and a mother. "Thank you, Mary," Thomas smiled. "This piece was my father's favorite." Mary's heart tightened. She knew Thomas's tragedy, but they never talked about it. But tonight would be different. Tonight, Thomas wouldn't just play music. He would reach the end of a 20-year hunt. 10-year-old Thomas lived on a small ranch in the New Mexico desert. His father, James McKinnon, was an honest rancher. His mother, Emily, sang beautiful songs and taught Thomas piano. That terrible night, 3 mounted men came to the ranch. Thomas was hiding in the barn, but he could hear everything. "James McKinnon, you owe us," said a deep voice. "I owe you nothing," his father was resolute. "Then take this." Bang, the crack of the Colt 45, sharp, metallic, a sound carved into his soul. Then his mother's screams, then the second gunshot. When Thomas came out of the barn to see, flames were engulfing everything. The hot metal fragment that splashed into his eyes took his sight forever. Thomas continued playing piano, but his mind drifted to 20 years ago. Every night he had the same nightmares. That gunshot, that sound he couldn't forget. The saloon was crowded, cowboys playing poker, miners sipping their drinks. Thomas could feel their moods through music. At 10 o'clock, Mary came over. "Tom, take a break. I brought tea." "Thank you, Mary. I have a strange feeling tonight." "What kind of feeling?" Like someone is watching me." Mary looked around. "Just regular customers, Tom." "Don't worry." But Mary was wrong. At that moment, the man who had just entered the saloon was the person Thomas had been searching for 20 years. It was 11 o'clock. Thomas was playing Moonlight Sonata. Then the door opened, and heavy boots echoed on the floor. Thomas's fingers froze on the keys. Those footsteps, heavy, confident, slightly favoring the left foot. The same walk. The same footsteps he'd heard at his ranch 20 years ago. His heart began racing wildly. Was it possible? "Piano player!" shouted the newcomer. The voice was deep, rough, familiar. "Play us a tune." When Thomas heard the voice, his blood froze. The same voice, the same man. "What would you like me to play?" Thomas asked, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. "A Western ballad, Got Home on the Range." Thomas began playing, but his mind was in turmoil. The killer was here, sitting across from him. But something even more shocking was about to happen, because that man wasn't just a killer. He was also a respected citizen of the town. Thomas continued playing while listening carefully. The man was ordering beer. "Jack Morrison," he introduced himself to Mary. "I'm the new sheriff." Thomas's world shook. Jack Morrison, the town's new sheriff and his father's killer. "Good to relax after a long journey," Morrison said. "This piano player is very talented." "Thomas?" Mary said. "Yes, very good. He's been playing here for 20 years. 20 years, huh? So he's been here a long time." Thomas tried to keep his fingers on the keys, but he was trembling. Morrison was approaching him. "My name is Jack Morrison," he said, coming up to Thomas. "The new sheriff." Thomas raised his head. "Thomas McKinnon. Pleased to meet you, Sheriff Morrison." Morrison's breath stopped. "Did you say McKinnon?" "Yes." A long silence. Then Morrison laughed. "Familiar name, an old friend's surname, but he's long dead." Morrison returned to his table, but continued watching Thomas. Thomas kept playing, but his mind was making plans. Was Morrison carrying his gun? Was he using the same weapon? At 11:30, a fight broke out. Two cowboys started arguing. One pushed the other. "Calm down, boys," Morrison said, standing up, and then it happened. One of the cowboys drew his gun. Morrison also drew his gun and fired. Bang! That sound. That damned sound. The same Colt 45, the same sharp metallic crack. The sound carved into Thomas's soul. Thomas stood up from the piano, his knees trembling. "Everyone calm down," Morrison shouted. "It's over." The shot cowboy was wounded but not dead. Morrison holstered his weapon. Thomas asked in a trembling voice, "Sheriff Morrison, that gun, is it a special weapon?" Morrison looked suspiciously. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious. The sound is very distinctive." Morrison grinned. "Yes, it's a special gun. I've carried it for 20 years. Never let me down." Thomas now knew for certain, but Morrison was also beginning to understand who Thomas was. The saloon was closing. The last customers were leaving. Morrison was about to leave too, but stopped. "Thomas," he said, "I need to talk to you." Mary was cleaning in the back. Thomas and Morrison were alone. "What shall we talk about, Sheriff Morrison?" Morrison approached. "You're James McKinnon's son, aren't you?" Thomas froze. "Did you know my father?" "I knew him," Morrison said in a cold voice. "Very well." "Do you know how he died?" Morrison smiled. "Of course I know, because I killed him." Thomas's face went white. "What did you say?" "You heard right. I killed your father, and your mother too." "Why?" Thomas's voice was barely audible. Morrison sat in a chair. "Your father owed me a lot of money. Gambling debt when he wouldn't pay. Lies, my father didn't gamble. He did, boy, and he was very bad at it. He owed me $1,000. Thomas stood up, his anger uncontrollable. "Liar! My father was an honest man." Morrison drew his gun. "Lower your voice, boy, or I'll send you to join your father." But Morrison didn't know that Thomas had spent the last 20 years planning his revenge. "Morrison," Thomas said in a calm voice, "I have a proposition for you." "What proposition?" "A duel, not with guns, with intelligence." Morrison laughed. "You're blind, boy. How are you going to duel with me?" "I'll play you a piece of music. If you know the piece, kill me. If you can't identify it, turn yourself in." Ridiculous. "Or are you afraid?" Morrison's face changed. "I'm not afraid of anything." "Then you accept," Morrison thought. "All right, but if you can't identify it, then I'll confess that my father really owed gambling debts." "Deal." Thomas went to the piano. His fingers were trembling, but he was determined. "Ready, Sheriff Morrison?" "Ready." Thomas began to play, a very special melody, initially familiar but then changing. Morrison listened. He frowned. This melody sounds familiar." Thomas continued playing. The melody became increasingly complex. "Do you know it?" Thomas asked. I almost, but not quite." "Your time is running out." Morrison began sweating. "Where is this melody from?" Thomas stopped. "This is the last piece my mother played for my father, before you killed them." Because Thomas's real weapon wasn't a Colt .45. It was his memory and music. Morrison was shocked. "Were you playing that night?" "Yes. My mother had never taught that piece to anyone, only to my father, and she only played it that night." "This won't stand as evidence." "Won't it?" Thomas smiled, saying, "Mary, can you come here?" Mary came out from the back. She was holding something. "What is this, Mary?" Morrison asked. "A written confession," Mary said. "We planned this with Thomas. Every word was recorded." Morrison looked around. The door was locked. The windows were closed. "You ... "Yes," Thomas said. "We set a trap for you, and you confessed." Morrison drew his gun, but Mary was faster. She had a rifle in her hands. "Drop your gun, Morrison. Whether I drop it or not, it's the same. They'll hang me." "Yes," Thomas said. "But you have a chance to die honorably." Morrison thought. Then he dropped his gun to the ground. "I'm not sorry," he said. "Your father really was in debt." "Maybe so," Thomas said, "but you had no right to kill him." The next day, Morrison was brought to trial. Thomas also testified. "Your Honor," Thomas said, "this man didn't just kill my father. He also distorted the past." "What do you mean?" the judge asked. "My father was gambling, that's true. But Morrison had tricked him into these debts with rigged games." Morrison stood up. "He's lying." "I have proof," Thomas said. "My father's diary." Thomas opened the pages of an old notebook. "It's written here. Morrison's rigged games and threats." The courtroom was silent. The judge gave his decision. "Jack Morrison, you are sentenced to death for the murder of James and Emily McKinnon." Morrison bowed his head. "Boy," he said to Thomas, "you won. But will this make you happy?" Thomas thought. "It won't make me happy, but it will give me peace." After Morrison's execution, Thomas felt everything had changed. 20 years of anger and pain were slowly lightening. Mary approached him. "How do you feel, Tom?" "Different, lighter." "Because you got your revenge." Thomas shook his head. "Number, because I learned the truth." Months passed. Thomas still played piano, but now different pieces. More cheerful, more hopeful music. "Tom," Mary said one evening, "there's something I need to talk to you about." "What?" I love you." Thomas was surprised. He could hear the shyness in Mary's voice. "Mary, You don't have to answer. I just wanted you to know." Thomas smiled. "Mary, that's the most beautiful sound I've heard in 20 years. 2 years later, Thomas and Mary had a son, little James. When Thomas first held the baby in his arms, he cried. "What's wrong?" Mary asked. "That sound, the heartbeat, just like my father's." "Is that a bad thing?" "No," Thomas smiled. "It's the most beautiful thing." Thomas began teaching his son piano. Little James was very talented. "Dad," said 5-year-old James, "why do you play with your eyes closed?" Thomas smiled. "Because music is played with the heart, not the eyes, son." "Can I play like that too?" "Of course, but you can keep your eyes open." As James grew up, Thomas told him the story of Grandfather James. "Was Grandfather a good man, Dad?" "A very good man, but sometimes he made wrong decisions." "Are you angry at him?" Thomas thought. "No, son, I love him, because he introduced me to your grandmother who taught me music." 25 years later, Thomas was 65 years old. He still played piano, but now not just at Silver Moon. He gave concerts throughout the town. That evening there was a special concert. In memory of the day Morrison was caught 25 years ago. "This piece," Thomas told the crowd, "I play for my family, for my deceased father James, for my deceased mother Emily, for my wife Mary, and for my son James." His fingers touched the keys, and the piece he played was exactly the piece his mother had played for his father that last night. But this time it carried love, not pain. Some wounds never heal, but over time they can become music. When Thomas McKinnon found his father's killer, he didn't just get revenge, he also saved his own soul. Because true strength lies in overcoming hatred and choosing love. A blind pianist's hands had touched not just the keys, but life itself again. If this story healed old wounds in your heart, if you love stories about justice, love, and second chances, subscribe to our channel, because sometimes the most beautiful music is born in the darkest nights. See you in the next story. May your music always be beautiful.